Welcome, everyone. This is another webinar that I think is going to be particularly useful now and particularly timely. And it's called What Makes the Ideal Live Streaming Strategy for Artists and Brands. And I'm Peter Csathy. I'm the chairman of Creative Media, business development, M&A, and advisory firm in the media tech and entertainment space. And today I'm going to be joined by John Petrocelli, who's the founder and chairman of Bulldog Digital Media, which is the leading company when it comes to high quality premium live streaming. So we'll get into that. Just a little background, and John, great to have you here.
Thanks, Peter. Great to be here.
And so in terms of context, the reason why this live webinar is really in high demand is because, as many of you know who are watching this, it is a time where artists and touring has completely stopped in the music business. Obviously, all things that are out-of-home entertainment, crowds, experiential entertainment, conferences, all those things have stopped. And when it comes to the world of concerts and festivals, it now looks like major events may be put off until the earliest, the fall of 2021. So for well over a year, which makes it even more important as artists are going through this pain of not being able to tour, which is their livelihood, to look for alternatives for ways to reach and engage with their fans, their super fans, and also to monetize so that they can support their work. And I've been speaking with a lot of artist managers and artists out there, and so this is very timely, and so we're very fortunate to have John, who's here, who's gonna walk us through. So just a little background, and then John, I'm going to ask you a little bit more for you to describe it yourself. But John has been in this space, media entertainment, in live streaming and other ways for tech to really help artists like Prince, where he really got started, get into the game of sharing, engaging with fans. And he's been doing the live streaming for many, many years, coming out of AEG, among other things. I mentioned Prince as some background too, and John will get into that. And then now he formed his own company for the last several years called Bulldog Digital Media. I'm a board member because I'm a believer in what John's doing. So John, before we get into a little bit of the history, and we'll keep that kind of brief, the history of live streaming, how we got from there to here, because I want to get into best practices and really have people understand all the different power, that it's a lot more than what we're doing right here, that live streaming is not just an artist who's in their living room and doing this. It's much more, it can be much more quality, feature rich, monetizing. And then for the brands who are out there who also can't support all these different major events that were fundamental to their branding strategy and marketing strategies, now's a real big opportunity to redirect those funds to something that's very meaningful. So with that, John, take it from here and give a little bit of your background, your journey, and then get into the history of live streaming.
Thanks, Peter. We're a live streaming company that's really focused on premium experiences. And our goal is to apply, best practices we've kind of learned along the way to elevate the experience for all of the various stakeholders. And, a stakeholder could be an artist, a record label, a management company, a promoter, a brand, or even, a platform. This is a big focus now, or it has been for the various social media platforms and others. And, our objective is to really transform the viewer into a participant and kind of unlock and harness the power of live video. And we've really kind of dialed that in and figured it out. And we have a core emphasis on music. And, kind of coming from our background, we also realize that there's big opportunities for brands to sponsor and present these engagements. And, we've really focused on how do we do that? How do we bring them into that environment? And how do we make it a win for the artist, the brand, and the fan? And, that's the business today. And obviously right now that's an area of high interest.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Just give us a little bit of the journey of live streaming. So a little bit of the history of live streaming and the different platforms that are out there and where they are today.
Yeah, the industry it's been around for 20, 25 years is the track record. initially the live streaming world was really noted for the failures, meaning if you recall back, way back when, things like the Victoria's Secret fashion show, quote unquote, crashed the internet.
Yeah.
Oprah Winfrey did a major event, a lot of stops and starts and challenges. And it wasn't really largely until the social media platforms started, focusing on the business. And the challenge too is inherent in that the internet was largely built for VOD, right? If you want to watch a movie on Netflix, a music video on Vivo, a TV show on Hulu, and anything and everything on YouTube, largely as an on-demand experience. And what the stakeholders in that universe did not contemplate is that people would want to watch things in real time on their devices. So the industry has been fueled by this explosion of connected devices. I think I've seen estimates from 2012 to 2022, we're going to go from 3 billion connected devices to globally upwards of 50 billion. In parallel, you had the kind of growth of the millennial demographic, whose focus is on experiences, and they've kind of fueled the experience economy. So there was these kind of two perfect storms kind of happening simultaneously, hence the emphasis on live video. And if you look at the kind of the trajectory of the market, initially the kind of the big entrance into the space was YouTube. So back in 2009, YouTube live streamed U2 live from the Rose Bowl. Later that year, they went on to present an Alicia Keys show on the platform brought to the viewer by Amex. And today, YouTube has a full-on stack. The big kind of noteworthy acquisition was Amazon's 2014 purchase of Twitch for nearly $1 billion. That's obviously been pretty fruitful. Later, Twitter in 2015 went ahead and acquired Periscope. That's a big part of their business today, is combination of communicating around live experiences. But the market really, really caught fire when Facebook launched the beta of live streaming in 15, and then made it a priority in 2016, followed by Instagram's 2017 launch, which brings us to today. Now in a pandemic, there's this, everyone has in the last 60 days live streamed something. So that's been kind of the evolution of the market. It's going to come. It's been a long, everyone seems to think this is a new kind of phenomenon, but as I said, my team and I have been in and around this industry for 2 decades. So it's been definitely an interesting kind of trajectory.
So thank you for that. I just want to make sure, can you see the slides behind you?
I cannot.
Okay. All right. So I want to make sure that we get that going too. But in any event, so I want to then get into, that's very helpful, a little bit now about the proven engagement, some of the, just before we get into best practices, why why live streaming is so impactful, and perhaps some of the engagement metrics, so people understand like what is important when it comes to live streaming. How do you measure success? What are you looking for? That sort of thing.
The big advantage of live video is watch time, right? Immediate audiences engaging and watching for protracted amounts of time. And we've learned that the opposite of that is just putting up surveillance video, right? That's not what consumers, great, I can see these slides now.
Okay, good.
They might come and check out a show and see something, but the challenge is, how do we keep them engaged? How do we get them to watch the experience and really start to share it out? So we've learned and kind of focused on the concept of transforming viewers into participants. And that's really where we see, significant success.
Okay, so viewers turning into participants, how do you measure that and what does that mean?
So we look for things like creating multi-channel experiences so the viewers can kind of curate their viewing experience, i.e. change camera positions, change stages at something like a music festival. I think that's a great way for them to get past kind of being force-fed linear broadcast television. Obviously, if you're a millennial or a Gen Z consumer, that's of critical importance. We've also learned that the live video player has got to load in the first 3 seconds, or we lose about 20% of the audience. So you have to have access to live, fast loading live player technology, which is to us is vastly different from a VOD player. And then, it's of tantamount importance to allow viewers to have collaborative and participatory experiences. And that happens when you enable them to post, comment, share, tweet, chat about what they're watching. So we've also learned that a lot of times that social stream can be off topic, it can be offensive, it can be not related to the video.
Yeah.
And by curating that social stream, rather than people pulling away, they're kind of leaning in, they're watching more, and they're sharing out, and they're having a conversation directly about what they're watching. So those are all key factors. And then we can turn on things like live polling or trivia, photo walls, calls to action, even kind of dynamic schedule widgets that really, now you've got people completely interacting in the live video versus, passively just kind of doing a drive-by and watching and then exiting.
Okay, so all of that matters obviously to the artist in terms of being able to monetize, and we'll get into what that kind of means, the different possibilities there, because I think that, again, it's little known in terms of all the different ways this can be meaningful, more than just a fan engagement, but actually putting dollars into the pockets, which is critical for managers to help their artists, and artists obviously, but also for the brand, since that's the second part of the focus, and they work hand in hand together, particularly in the music space. So get into that, yes, but just really quickly, this wheel here that you have on this slide about the benefits to fan, artist, label, promoter, and the brands, just touch upon all these different stakeholders and why live streaming matters. And obviously this is now particularly important because of the pandemic and people are locked in. And like I said, a lot of things are closed down outside of the home in terms of big events until potentially the fall of 2021. But even before the pandemic, this is an important tool in the arsenal for everybody to know about, because it doesn't replace live experiences, it augments them, it expands the opportunities. And so this will be obviously very critical right now during the pandemic and while things are shut down. But I'm very bullish on live streaming being a critical part moving forward. And also the fact that today's pandemic really finally brings live streaming front and center to a lot of people who haven't been thinking about it before, because we're all like doing this now. We're much more comfortable doing this. But so take us through the wheel of stakeholders and touch upon that.
Yeah, I think, very noteworthy to start is the promoter. Obviously my team and I have come out of AEG when, a couple years back, Michael Rapino announced a partnership, the CEO of Live Nation, with Vice. And he went on CNBC talking about what that meant. It's, concerts and live experiences on the Vice platform. And, the very first question he was asked is, isn't this going to cannibalize ticket sales? And his response was, and which we knew, was just the opposite. The more live video that the company serves, the more tickets that they sell. So live video is a very compelling way for, to implement discovery. There's also great ways for, whether you're on a tour or you're a festival promoter, to amplify that experience out and take it from a local experience to a national or international, media engagement. So very powerful ways to do that. Early on, I recall live streaming Lollapalooza in Chicago, and some of the data I think helped inform the promoter that they had a pretty rabid audience in certain regions around the world. And today, Lollapalooza is in places like Chile, Argentina, Brazil, Paris, Frankfurt, and with expansion plans as well. And that data that you get from live video helps build strategies for where you want to tour and offer those experiences in the future. From a brand perspective, and we can kind of get into
and John, just even during this lockdown where you don't have the touring, so from a promoter standpoint, how can they look at the benefits of this to their business now while they're completely shuttered?
Well, without touring for the next year to 18 months, right, that's a significant challenge. So the idea that enabling artists to perform either in their home or in their home studios, or even in kind of empty venues that are, have certain, I would say, limitations on how many people can be in a room together. There are ways to then put on live experiences and reach reach your fans and your audience who are, in front of their devices in their homes consuming, I would say very significant amounts of video. In April, the Twitch platform had 1.6 billion hours consumed, and 17 million of those hours were music, which is kind of a new focus of the Twitch platform, which really speaks to, hey, I'm creating new music, I'm putting on my performance. Great ways for artists to stay in touch with their fans. The introduction of ideas around pay-per-view or brand sponsored shows can also start to create, revenue generation, right? Which they're not able to do given that's the big focus of the market. There was an article this past week.
And just on that, so you and I talked a little bit about it, and then we'll get into the article, but we talked a little bit about it a couple days ago about looking at creative ways, like, touring is stopped, but virtual touring doesn't need to stop. So it can be a major event that's an online event or a virtual live streaming event that has all the whistles and bells that you're going to get into, and it can be done by pay-per-view in a very impactful fashion. And Bulldog, I know this, that you have a pay-per-view product that's very strong and very feature rich and very high quality. So from a promoter standpoint, as well as an artist and brand standpoint, that's critical. So you can think big. It doesn't have to be one person or one artist that's streaming. It could be a major event that's done with things like virtual, like merchandising that's tied to the virtual event, which could be impactful and additional monetization tools. So it's much, really the sky's the limit in terms of the possibilities.
Yeah, definitely. There's ways to create, as you say, virtual tours, performances. The beauty of watch time is you can, and we do this pretty actively, is integrate calls to action. Hey, here's what you're enjoying. Do you want to go deeper? Here's an offer you can make to somebody about, signing up, enrolling in a newsletter, even integration into merch stores as well. Again, the watch time is it's a very, I would say, impactful result of live video, and it can definitely kind of buoy the current situation that we're in. And there was a story, the Versus experience on Instagram is very highly watched. The Jill Scott, Erykah Badu experience led to, I think, a tripling of their catalog streams. So the discovery possibilities are super substantial, and that's tied back to revenue, right? That those could be streams happening on Apple or Spotify that go back to the rights holders and the artists themselves. So significant opportunities there. And I think that, the beauty of the music community is very creative. There's great ways to, I think, Post Malone's performance on YouTube, he did an entire set just as a tribute to Nirvana. I think presented him in a completely different way. Especially, you had to get Travis Barker on drums, and it was a pretty compelling, experience. And you've seen Erykah Badu performing in different rooms of her house. So, you can bring a lot of interesting creativity, and the audience is open to experiments, right? They'll give you feedback. There's a lot of things that you can do today that normally, people probably wouldn't, they're out touring, they're out doing their day-to-day jobs, but now we're in a different climate. There's great ways live video can add to that creativity.
Well, and also fans you mentioned Erykah Badu or any artist, fans will pay to support, they're hungry to experience their favorite artist. They're very hungry to do that. Now they can't go in some of the more traditional ways. They can do a live streaming event, which is a different kind of experience that could be impactful and sometimes even more authentic, sometimes even more personal, and fans will pay for that. I'm absolutely a believer in that. And so from a pay-per-view standpoint, I think that's really interesting. It's a great thing for the fans. Fans are happy to, they're happy to support, but it's also a great thing for the artist, and it's the creativity, but it's all these different monetization paths. And you can do things like, we talked about this a little bit in the past too, that you have a pay-per-view event, but then there can be a super fan that gets a special, even more exclusive event that they pay a little bit more for. There could be some merchandise that's associated with it, and it's a more personal experience to them. So there's different levels that can be done with the kind of features that you have to offer within what your platform is, and or not platform, but with your enabling, your ability to enable. And one other interesting piece that I think is really important for all participants to understand is you can also drive people back from all the various, platforms like Twitch and Instagram Live, etc. You enable all of that. And one idea and one thing that has worked well is that you can take a link through when you're working with your feature set, give artists a link that they can share across all their social media platforms, maybe do one song or two songs on those platforms, and then drive people back to their own artist page if they want the full concert, the full experience, and other whistles and bells. And that would be a pay-per-view event. So essentially, your entire social media feed across all your various social feeds can serve as marketing to drive your fans back, monetize, engage with them, and also collect the data.
Yeah, we are I would say very much an artist first focused company. We kind of think that's the driver of this business, and largely going back to our history, working with Prince kind of opened our eyes. But definitely, and as a result, we're experts, I would say, across the market at live streaming on social media. Facebook is a client of ours. We kind of moved YouTube back into this world years ago. We do a lot of business on platforms like Twitch and Twitter on behalf of our clients. So we've developed a lot of expertise. In parallel, we're also big believers in building white labeled experiences that we can embed anywhere. Artist property, brand property, you name it. So there are great ways to leverage eyeballs and viewers on those other platforms and drive them back to the richer artist owned and operated hub. And it's true for the brand community as well. Some brands might say to me, hey, I know I need to be on Facebook and YouTube, but I also want to have my own experience where I can kind of talk directly to my consumer base. So we do a little bit of both. We do hybrid, simulcasting on social, but also promoting and driving. You might tease the first show on Facebook or Instagram and then drive the viewer back to the hub to buy a virtual ticket and have that deeper, kind of richer experience. These are all key assets and tools, and there's no denying that the ardent hardcore super fans are big backers of their artists. They're passionate about not only consuming the video, but also looking at custom curate. Maybe there's a special merch developed for this particular show that's related to that moment in time, or maybe the artist is going to do something that speaks to their fans in London or their fans in Miami, so they can develop related merchandise as well that can be bought or rolled up into those packages. And you're right, a VIP experience could be for select super fans a post Zoom session with the artist after the actual live show. A lot of kind of creative ways to kind of look at servicing both the fan that might discover you, but also the fan that's very passionate and's been with you for years.
So just so people have a reference point and they can understand and it's really internalize what you're talking about. A lot of these things that you're talking about can be on your can be seen on your website, which is bulldogdm.com, including you have some video links there, right? That
correct
people can see so they can just really internalize it. They can find that where? Just done.
If you go to bulldogdm.com, there'll be a client button, and you'll see logos. And usually the logos have recap videos or case studies to kind of walk everybody through. And
one thing that's important, there's a reason why I wanted to have you on, because there's a lot of confusion, I think, about different ways to live stream, understandably, because it's new to a lot of different people, including artists, including brands, including managers, a lot of different places to go. But when you're looking at the kind of features that we're talking about for high quality, for premium quality, for really engaging, for enabling all the kinds of powerful things that you're talking about, you guys really do kind of stand alone. That's why all these different brands that are on this slide are working with you. And so I'll just mention one thing about that. From my perspective, when you look at artists, I mentioned monetization. Managers, they need to monetize. Artists need to engage in high quality. Quality really matters. It really, really matters. Being able to drive people back to their artist website, where on other platforms, or when you're just on Twitch, you're not able to capture that kind of data. This way you can leverage all the different platforms driving back to you. But also from an advertising standpoint, it's critical to be brand safe. It's critical to be working, to feel comfortable as a brand that you're sponsoring an event with a company that's the live streaming expert has proven itself, because you got to have a good experience. Otherwise, it's going to reflect badly on the brand too, not just the artist. So I don't know if you have any more thoughts about that in terms of, you know, the brand experience and what they're looking for.
You know, we started to focus upon launch directly on the brand community because, you know, coming out of AEG, we realized that promoters are kind of overburdened with 3 Herculean tasks. They have to book bands, sell tickets, and manage the on-site sponsorship. And, you know, those are 3 massive tasks for them to endure. So we started looking at ways to drive, you know, brands into these experiences, largely due to the fact that, you know, it becomes a media discussion versus just kind of a one-off sponsorship. And we've really kind of tooled the business and figured out on just how to do that. How do we address, and we looked at 3 kind of massive challenges that the brands are having. You know, one is cord cutting. I think it's undisputable that, you know, especially people under a certain age have all either cut the cord or they're cord nevers. So the consumer that the bigger brands are trying to reach is not watching Law and Order on Thursday night on NBC and consuming the State Farm commercial.
Yep.
The other is, you know, if you shift to digital, you've got a preponderance of ad blockers now, especially on mobile handsets. You know, a couple of years ago, that number was like 615 million with massive projected growth. And then third is brand safety. So we found that there were big brands, P&G, you know, Johnson & Johnson, AT&T, putting ads up, and they're finding that it's next to dubious, nefarious, polarizing, you know, just really objectionable content.
Yeah.
So those are challenges almost everywhere they were turning. And again, the bigger, you know, kind of companion issue is how do I reach millennials and Gen Zs as well? So we looked at live video. To us is the tonic and the solution that does that. It's especially with music, it's a brand, and this could also be for other, you know, non-forms of non-music live video as well. But here's a way to directly engage the consumer and bypass those 3 big problems, right? They're opting into the experience. It's brought to you by the brand. There are no other advertisements in and around that engagement, especially when you know, get into a best practice experience. And now I think if you looked at, you know, you see our previous was our client roster. It took us a while to have that conversation and talk about if it was evangelism and kind of white papers and speaking and kind of roundtable discussions. But brands started coming back to us and saying, hey, you know, you were right. We've got these problems. We want to address this. We want to fix this. And they started, so we started focusing on things like experiential and amplifying experiential to a bigger audience.
Yeah.
And then they started also, you know, focusing very heavily on music as a part of that. So fortunately, that's really resonated. We I think now understand, you know, what the disruptive challenges are that are facing, you know, Madison Ave. And we've built a platform that fully understands that. And so we think that by bringing music and brands together with live video, there's a win for all of those various stakeholders.
Well, no, and when you look at creating the biggest and most impactful experiences for all the participants in that wheel that we had on the previous slide, from a brand perspective, engagement, deep engagement, reaching a wide audience, like a directly relevant audience, that's a passionate audience, especially as other avenues are now gone. The quality matters, the feature set matters. If they feel safe, they're willing to redirect more ad dollars into that space, right, and into that opportunity. So it enables a much larger, more impactful experience. And then from an artist standpoint, of course, an artist wants to be able to interact with their fans and reach them and continue their craft. But also, like we said, you know, this is about monetization too. Ultimately, that's what the artist wants to do. And so to be able to bring the brands together with the artists and create the most impactful and most monetizing experience for all the participants, brand safety is critical. And then we'll get into best practices a little bit. But first, because a lot of people we have in the audience, we had a lot of managers. We have managers and artists, but we also have a lot of you know, agencies that represent brands and major brands. So in these times right now, when everybody's in so much pain, how do these different participants, like the artists, how do they find the right brands, and how do the brands really find the artists to bring these experiences together so that they can realize them?
Well, I think every brand now either has or is developing, a music strategy. And I think the numbers, millennials, I think 93% of them list music as a passion or a hobby or a priority. If you follow previous to the pandemic, Live Nation's, earnings calls, it's been, I think 8 years of year-over-year record-breaking growth. A lot of that has been fueled by sponsorships around the call it the Live Nation flywheel. So there's a kind of a built-in interest. A lot of it has been kind of, I call it old school. So they're sponsoring things like venues or tours, or they're active at music festivals. And what we have found is the ability to introduce a live streamed experience is now you're amplifying those impressions, A, out to a much bigger audience, but B, they're engaged and they're watching for significant amounts of time. That Alicia Keys' show on YouTube back, 10 years ago became American Express on Stage, where Amex would take an iconic venue, they'd bring in an artist who's about to release some new music, and then bolt on a feature film director. So you'd see John Legend and the Roots performing at Terminal 5 in New York, directed by Spike Lee, or Duran Duran at the Mayan in LA, directed by David Lynch. That, 6 of those shows, I think, reached about 22 million viewers. So great reach. But more importantly for Amex, the watch time, again, largely based on some of our best practices, was 25 minutes on, per viewer.
With the audience they want to reach, with the demographics that they want to reach. Right.
And, I think when that service started, it was really hard for them to, kind of put the word out. But once it got rolling, bands were, I'm going to launch my record as part of the Unstaged, platform. And, we've worked with Coca-Cola. Coke's come to us and said, hey, we're very active at the #1 rock festival in Mexico. It's been around for, 2 decades. And what we'd like to do is amplify our presence there and share the experience with the entire country. So for several years, we live streamed. It was Coke's presentation of the Vive Latino Festival, but then also started moving them towards a viewing hub where they could offer a completely compelling experience. So we were live streaming 3 channels of music for 11 hours on a Saturday, coming from 6 stages on a Saturday and a Sunday. So about 70 or 80 bands. And Coke would offer you the ability to switch between 3 live channels of video, the ability to post and comment and share. We had a dynamic schedule widget that showed you who's performing on what channel at what time and on what day. And you could go into that dynamic schedule widget and say, I'm Peter and I'm a fan of Jake Bug, G-Eazy, and Prophets of Rage. Enter your mobile number and get a push notification directly from Coke saying, hey, Peter, we're reminding you that the band you wanted to make sure you didn't miss is about to come on channel 1 in about 5 minutes. The result for Coke, and by the way, they did simulcast out to their social platforms. The average watch time just on their microsite, their viewing hub, for mobile was 29 minutes. And for desktop, it was 113 minutes. Wow. And the feedback we got from them was, we're having a hard time getting attention from this demographic for seconds. And here we have their full captive attention. And we're also able to provide really compelling data and metrics about the audience, where they are, how long they're watching, what are they discussing in the social stream, even down to the profile, what the device profile, who's on iOS versus who's on Android. So great feedback for the brand to figure out, I've got X amount of people on, say, Android that I wasn't aware of, and I want to create advertising and campaigns going forward. So very successful. And that was largely done through, a best practice methodology, like you're seeing here, really with the notion of, I want to transform my viewer into a participant in the experience, give them the ability to switch viewing perspectives, switch channels, give them the ability to share and comment. Again, all done in a curated fashion. You're not going to see objectionable commentary happening in a curated social stream. And that's what we found the audience really, really wants. Yeah.
Quality is critical. That's critical. The broad reach of being able to redirect people from social streams back to the hub. Yeah, all that.
Yeah, and then even turning on, a trivia poll and trivia, engaging the audience, asking. Maybe we've seen things where the audience helps the artist pick the encore, right? There's cool ways to do that. And, that's where we see you kind of unlocking this solution of, engaged viewership. And again, the holy grail for Madison Ave is engagement. And I think live video does that better than anything. And if you marry that with music, I think you're looking at and again, sponsoring things like live sports, the price tag, the barrier entry is massive, right? If you want to sponsor the NFL, I think it's like $1 billion that Verizon's deal is. So a lot of brands don't have those dollars.
Exactly.
And we can apply this too. You don't have to be a multi-platinum artist like Jay-Z. You could be an emerging artist that resonates with a brand and their fans. So there's big opportunities for, I think, everyone at every stage of their career, and also every brand of every size with live streaming.
Well, and also, again, I want to urge people, if they really want to internalize it, they can see this slide here that shows some of the best practices types of things that Bulldog can do. And I want to be very clear that you can't, there are so many different live streaming solutions out there, and they are not feature rich. And so if you want to be able to, if brands or artists and managers and promoters and fans want to have the best experience, but if they want to be able to really maximize the live streaming opportunity in all respects, it's critical to understand that all these different possibilities and features exist, because that's what's going to differentiate. But if you want to really see it more kind of live and not just through a slide, I urge you to go to Bulldog's site to check out the videos, because the videos are really compelling, and they'll take you through, like the Coke in Mexico experience that you were talking about. There's a full video that it's probably like 1 minute, 2 minutes long, that kind of goes
ironically, Coke created that. It's a user tutorial on about 90 seconds, walking the fans through, here are all the cool ways you can enjoy this experience, which is going to be very different from you just passively watching a webcam or surveillance video. And it was, they did it upon, they took that upon themselves. And I think that also contributed to some of the results they had. But yeah, you can see that video on our case study with Coke on our site.
Okay, great. Any other best practices that we haven't discussed yet that people should know about?
I think you need to understand what your priority social media platforms are. Some brands or some artists heavily leverage Facebook. I think everybody has some sort of Instagram strategy. Others, Twitch, Twitter, or YouTube. It's good to understand where your audience is and how to engage them on those platforms, whether you are a brand.
Speaking of Instagram, just touch a little bit about, we talked about social stream, or using the social presence to drive back to a white label solution or white label location for the artist themselves, their site, something like that. But also talk a little bit about Instagram and the ability to be able to stream directly into the Instagram feed.
Yeah, so Instagram has become massively popular. I think of the 1 billion people on the platform, 50% follow 10 or more music artists. So it's almost built for fans, brands, and artists. Having said that, a lot of times, a lot of the platforms have strengths and a lot of them have challenges.
Yeah.
And, live video is not easy, right? I can go back to my career kind of helping, YouTube step into that business to be the kind of the Mercedes that it is today. But it's definitely not easy, and it certainly wasn't easy 10 years ago. And then, I should say it's not that easy today either. But to live stream on Instagram, you are the default and the limitation is camera phone only. And we've built a tool that allows us to take produced video and stream that on Instagram. And why that's important is Instagram has a compelling and terrific alert notification system. When an account goes live, everyone's alerted that's on the platform that, hey, this account is now live. Yeah. And it becomes the default, right? That's the first account you see when you open your app. That's, the live one is the priority. And the audience really responds to that. If they see produced like 4 camera production versus camera phone, that gets a lot of buzz and a lot of, I think people start to share it out and talk about it. So that's a great tool. We've had great success with that, both with our brand clients and our artists.
Let's face it, I'll pick one of my favorite artists of the times right now, Grimes. So Grimes has, God knows how many millions especially when you you add Elon Musk's Instagram feed to the mix. But you can imagine for any Grimes fan, you're getting an alert through her Instagram feed that she's going to start streaming right now, and you're going to get tremendous engagement from that. And then the power to be able to take that and perhaps then send that super fan, or invite that super fan to come to a full experience or a richer experience, and be able to monetize that through pay-per-view as an example, or through merchandise or whatever, or super VIP access, like a post-show virtual event or something like that. I mean, that's tremendously powerful.
Definitely, and we've had great success in doing that. So you could, as an artist, do live stream your pre-show on Instagram, or you could do the opening song and kind of direct the audience back. We also build backplates, which kind of make the experience, especially if you're a brand. We've done this with AT&T and others. It helps make the experience, stand out. So there's an opportunity there. You could, monetize via directing back to a paid audience, or have a brand present and sponsor it on the platform as well. But Instagram is a super, I would say, popular platform. At the end of April, Mark Zuckerberg reported that 800 million people a day are watching live video on Facebook and Instagram. So you've got, I think the big thing we saw, I think about a year or a year and a half ago, obviously there's a fascination with advertising to millennials. And the data on millennials was, I think 63% of the time watched live video, and 42% of them create it. And we started to see that there was not, there wasn't enough supply of premium live video to meet the demand. And so there's a lot of ways to kind of harness what's happening both on the social platforms and then with your audience, whether you're a brand or whether you're an artist.
Yeah. And then from a monetization standpoint, we touch upon a lot of different things, but are there any other ways that that managers or artists should think about the different possibilities to actually make money and drive revenue from the live streaming opportunity?
Yeah, we've had great success with the integration of calls to action in live video, graphics as well. Saying, hey, if you like what you're watching here, we want to make you some kind of an offer, or click here if you want to learn about, let's say BMW is sponsoring this performance. If you'd like to sign up for, a test drive, click here to do that. And so that's dollars that the brand's putting toward the artist. Same with the artist, right? We want here, click here to go into our merch store experience. And having worked at a promoter, I quickly realized that if you're going to buy something, the propensity to buy a T-shirt or something related to a concert is going to happen when you're at the venue, either pre or post the experience. And I think live video is a great way to kind of capitalize on that important moment, right? Put offers, connect in, allow, when fans start watching for more than a couple minutes, they are communicating with you. And I've seen this in the social stream. They want to go deeper, right? Let's, help me. I want to understand more about this artist, where you might be touring, what I can explore, what I could potentially buy. So there's great ways to integrate, as I said, a call to action and kind of engage your fan.
Tell me, I'm just, I do a lot of writing about kind of the future looking, where the media and entertainment world is going, driven by tech, but just in general. Do you believe, I kind of think that game models, like free-to-play models, are related to what you were just talking about. So you're in a live streaming experience and you can integrate features, not just the kinds of things you're talking about, but instant impulse sorts of maybe virtual backgrounds. I don't know, things that super fans may pay for, and those dollars add up very significantly, or specialized call outs to like a super fan, things like that. Do you think that there's some potential in those kind of opportunities?
I think in the information age that we're living, any time that a fan can be recognized by an artist, and that's super important to them, right? Would they pay for that? I think definitely, right? It's very highly likely that they would. I'm a big believer in being kind of Switzerland and let the market advise the stakeholders on how to monetize. And even if you're in a pay-per-view environment, there's no reason why Samsung couldn't present the experience to the audience as well. So as I said, having an artist first mentality, and it was largely, years working with Prince kind of opened my eyes as to what an artist goes through. And that's probably the most successful independent artist of all time. And in my mind, probably the greatest live performer we'll ever see.
And Minnesota guy, and I'm a Minnesota guy, so
yeah. That's true. And and then kind of going through the process of watching how AEG interacts both with paying fans, but also integrates sponsors and brand partners. There's an interesting business, and a lot of that can transfer over into the live streaming world without question.
Well, yeah, I mean, look, there's so many different ways that you can tie in a lot of things. You can tie in, you can do a pay-per-view event and tie in access to a new song, or things like that. There's all apart from merchandise. There's truly, as cliche as it sounds, sky is the limit, and it's really understanding the different possibilities, taking the best practices that you talked about, and then actively doing it and experimenting. And that's the one thing that I would urge everybody to do who's listening, whether you're a promoter, whether you're an artist, whether you're a manager, is now's the time to really, if you haven't already gotten into the game of live streaming, to be entrepreneurial, to really check it out, to understand the possibilities, to work with experts who really can help you and monetize significantly, redirect your ad dollars to engage as effectively as possible, reach your fans in ways that are high quality, but meaningful to them, really meaningful to them. So it showcases in a big way. So like that's my fundamental point here, and why there is such demand for this webinar, but also what I really urge people to do is to get out there and try it, because this live streaming opportunity was pre-pandemic, but a lot of people are realizing it now and desperate to try it and take advantage of it. But it will also apply once we're safe to go back into the to all events out of home, which we all want to do. Live streaming is yet another way that will continue on to be a significant tool in the arsenal to reach fans and to expand your craft. So, John, I wanted to thank you. And for people to learn more, again, go to the Bulldog site, bulldogdm.com. You can see a lot of videos there. There's a lot more information that we are talking about, including best practices and all of that. And then for those of you who wanted, I wrote a book during the pandemic called Viral Media Entertainment in the Age of the Great Pandemic that I'm making available for free to everybody as my small little gesture. So if you go to the creative.media website and you go to the Insights tab, just sign up for the Viral Media book, and happy to send it to you. I discuss live streaming among other things in there, so there's going to be some more detail about it, but then it gets into all the other sectors of the media and entertainment space, including my predictions of where the world's going after that. But again, John, thanks for joining. I think that, is there anything else that I may have forgotten to ask you that might be helpful?
Yeah, I think, it's not lost upon us that this is a tough time for a lot of people. I think especially for the live music industry. Yeah, as a result, we're happy to get on the phone or have a call or have a Zoom session with any stakeholder in the industry that wants to, because a lot of, live video, I think, is daunting.
Yeah.
We're happy to have a conversation, walk through, do a little kind of education or help in any way that we can. And, further to that too, we built solutions for the virtual experience. So we've developed kits that kind of elevate the quality of the audio, the video, and the lighting. So we're pretty versed at that, and we can manage things very remotely. But we're happy to have a conversation and transfer as much knowledge as we can, and help the community understand what their options are. And there's definitely free. So you can free broadcast on Facebook and all the other platforms, and we encourage that. But also, if you want to get into more a managed solution, we're happy to have that conversation.
Yeah. Listen, again, I've known John for a long, long time. Quality all the way in terms of not only what they do over at Bulldog, but also just in terms of a guy and being experienced. I don't think there's anybody more experienced on the planet when it comes to live streaming. So it's great to have you on.
Thanks so much.
feel free to reach out to John if you have any questions, or reach out to me if you have any questions about things. And thanks for joining.
Thanks, Peter. Appreciate it.